guys, Tessa Arnold here. Another episode of Step Into the Gap podcast where we talk about all the things, right? More importantly, stepping into the gap, what we can do with our thoughts, and the incredible superpower that we have when we really tap into it, knowing that we are capable of so much more, that we limit ourselves all the time, and complacency is where dreams go to die. So let's listen today. We have an incredible guest, Dr. Nona, who's going to talk about all the things that there are, especially as it relates to quantum leaps, as I like to call it, and how you can expand beyond the simple limitations that you put on yourself each and every day. Because I promise you, you are capable of so much more. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. If you could, for our audience, just introduce yourself, let them know who you are, what you do, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Tessa. I love this conversation and knowing a bit about you, I feel like this will be amazing conversation for your audience as well. I think there's so much I can say about myself that usually comes in my bio. Like, I'm an author, I write for Forbes, I've been in the media, I have built multiple part-time business. There's just so much that's in my bio. But I feel the most important thing that I can actually share for people to get to know me, aside from what might be in a typical bio, is actually the struggle that one of the struggles I can share, maybe that will give a sense to everybody to go a little bit deeper, right? And get to know why I am about the quantum
Yes.
leap itself.
I love that. Yeah, let's go deep. That's what everybody wants to hear. We want to get into the stuff, right, that connects us all as humans, which are the trials and tribulations. So please.
Yes. Okay. So, lots of different things in my life have happened, but one of the darkest moments that I experienced was kind of an ironic moment because in this particular moment, I had a really successful business, a brick and mortar. I was a chiropractor at a pediatric
Mhm.
practice, 13 employees. I was married.
Yes.
My marriage looked really good on paper, and to anybody that looked into my marriage, it looked perfect. And I just had my first child, so life was technically perfect. I mean, I checked off all of these things off of the list of what society tells you should be doing, what my parents had told me, what the culture tells us, the consciousness
Yeah.
of the world kind of pushes us in the direction of these are the things you need to do to be successful or to
Right.
be happy. And in that moment, or series of moments, I guess, I remember my eldest, who's now 9. I have two
Mhm.
boys. One is 9 and one is 5. My 9-year-old at the time was a newborn baby, so we're talking a decade ago. I just put him to sleep to take a nap, and I had just finished a call with my staff running through the numbers and
Yeah.
everything. And just like at any normal day.
Mhm.
And then I remember I walked myself into the walk-in closet and I shut the door and I shut the lights and I literally sat down next to the wall that was available, and
Mhm.
I held my knees and I just sobbed.
Mm. Mm.
Of course, part of this, anyone who's ever been a mom or maybe has experienced postpartum, part of this was me swimming in all the postpartum hormones, but a
Right.
bigger portion of this, or maybe what brought all of those emotions, was how I felt completely unfulfilled and completely trapped in the life that I had created. I was always this type A personality, like super gung ho about going to school. I went to Berkeley. I studied neurology. I had good grades. I did all the
Mhm.
things that you're supposed to be doing. And
Right.
here I was. It felt like everything I had done had built this wall around me, and here I am in a dark closet, really like crying and
Yeah.
sobbing and trying to hold back on my sobbing because my newborn was taking a nap. And so I remember in those series of moments, I realized that there was this flash of a vision that had come to me. And this vision is not something that it wasn't the first time that I had seen it. It was something
Yeah.
very familiar. I think everyone will relate to this, which is something you always knew that you want to experience in life,
Hmm.
right? As a little girl, before you took on all these different roles.
Right.
Um, Life to be a certain way, partnerships to be a certain way, the sense of family to be a certain way, to be able to adventure and travel and have the freedom to do the things to contribute to the world and the way that you thought you were going to contribute. So
Right.
this vision came to me, not for the first time, but I just kind of saw a flash of it. And I remember in those moments of despair and sitting in the closet, like metaphorically, also giving myself space to feel all the pain and then
Right.
and not being able to come out of it, but seeing the vision just for a moment, even though that vision seemed so far away from where I
Hmm.
was so completely unhappy in my marriage. I was just unhappy in my business, even though on paper it looked good. Um, but once I saw the vision of the life that I used to kind of dream about as a little girl, just in that moment, I had this
Yeah.
sense of freedom. I had this sense of like possibility.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I made a decision in that moment that instead of questioning the vision and being like, oh, that's not for, oh, I can't do that. Because it's true, I couldn't do that from where I was sitting in the closet.
Right.
Couldn't do that in that state.
Right.
So I made the decision instead of questioning it, I was going to walk out of the closet and I was going to
Yeah.
keep saying yes to the vision. I was going to expand the vision and I was
Hmm.
going to just say yes to it, create some certainty around the vision.
Yeah.
And to wrap that story up,
I
fast
love that.
forward, yeah, fast forward. But a decade later, I get to live this beautiful life, engaged to my fiance. That was my ex-husband at the time.
Yeah.
Not my fiance is not my ex-husband. My got divorced.
Sure. Yeah.
And now I get to live between Italy and Orange County and raise my two boys and have this life and contribute to the world in the ways that are really meaningful and fulfilling
Mm.
and aligned with who I am and intentionally designed. And I love helping others do the same thing.
Oh, so, so much and so beautiful. And thank you. So incredibly grateful for you sharing that story and putting it out in the world and everything that you do. And I'll tell you, because I think anybody on the line, including myself, can say, that's me. It's so many different stages of that, at different stages of feeling that way and metaphorically going into the closet and breaking down and finding those moments of stillness, right? Craving those moments of stillness where you've held it together all day long, right? For your kids, for your spouse, for your employees, for your parents, for whomever it is. And then you're like, okay, I just got to make it home because I know if I get home, I can go into the bathroom and I can cry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. So, everybody that's listening, you're doing it. You're making this space, you're carving out that little bit of space, and nothing is innately wrong with you. You are human. And
Mm-hmm.
it is just, we can unpack this in so many different ways because this takes us back to really the dilemma that I think so many women and even men are in right now,
Mm-hmm.
where with the mold that's been placed over us, right? this this society dictates, maybe our parents, and maybe they don't even do it to us, it's just something that they've fallen into too. We go to school, we figure out, people ask us what we want to be. I had no idea what I wanted to be. I was like, oh, who are you kidding? I've never even lived yet. I'm just trying to figure out what to wear today and what I have to do when I get home and do homework, and you're trying to make me plan out this whole thing. And it's funny with my marriage. I was married for 11 years and with him with 16, and I'll never forget certain things that I said sometimes that I don't even know who was saying that. He asked me to move across the country, and I was like, well, not with a boyfriend. We've got to have some kind of commitment. And some of these things, sure, probably felt good to me. But then I was like, I need to have children by 30. I need to have the career. I need to check the boxes. And nobody was telling me that I needed to, but it was this almost, subconscious predisposition opinion that
Mhm.
I had to do these things. And I
Mhm.
never once stopped to ask myself, do I want to?
What do I want?
What do I want? Who is me? Who am I? And what do I want to be doing right now? So the identity crisis continued, right?
Mhm.
Until it gets to the point where you are doing all of these things. You've done them. You
Mhm.
have, the accolades on the wall. You have the thriving business. You have the beautiful children. You have the marriage. You're like, I want to pack up and run away. And
Mhm.
that, I'm here to tell you, we both are. Anybody who's listening, that's okay.
Yeah.
Just hold fast and find those moments of stillness, and we can get you through this because we can connect as other humans who have done it and are doing it and figure it out. And it's funny, and I would love to get your opinion, on so much of this, but just on that same train of thought, I'll tell you, even with what I do now,
Mm.
leaving corporate job, going through the divorce, moving my kids, starting this new, to be of service and putting these stories out there and sharing with others, I still have moments where I'm like, holy hell, what am I doing? A moment of crises where I'm like,
Mhm.
this was never the plan. I've deviated so much from the plan that it almost feels like I'm trying to get pulled back in.
Mhm.
And you go on the job posting boards or you go to the old work site and you're like, well, maybe they take me back. But innately in your soul as yourself that you
That.
can't go back. It would feel so unnatural now,
Yeah.
right? It's like you were a fish and you've grown wings and now you're flying. You can't go back into the water. It doesn't feel right anymore when your whole world has expanded so much and you are in tune to self and who you're meant to be. And to everybody listening, that probably seems like such a huge stroke of a change, but with the steps that you can take to get there. And a lot of what I heard mentioned was finding stillness and
Mhm.
listening, right? And
Mhm.
listening to that self inside of you. You can figure it out. And I'd love to hear now what you share in regards to how you do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I love what you said. There are a couple of things I want to say something about because they're so powerful. First, I want to make sure everybody knows it took me a decade to get here. So it's not going to be a fast track, oh, here, the things you share on Instagram and life is really juicy. It happened overnight because of
Right,
one situation
right.
in the closet. And two, I want to say that the reason we keep going back to the job board, the reason we keep going back to the same sort of partners, the reason we keep going back to what seems to be safe, all of that is because that is more familiar to our nervous system. So I always tell my students, I say, you are prone to experiencing what you have experienced in the past. As a matter of fact, I'm a little bit more bold about it. You will only experience what you have experienced in the past. And first glance, it seems like, well, that sucks because if my parents were
Right,
toxic relationship, or if I've never made it in business, or if I've never experienced X, Y, and Z, then I'm not going
right.
to be able to experience it in the future. But I'll expand on that. I'll expand how you can get beyond that. It is true from a nervous system perspective that you cannot experience anything you have not experienced in the past, which is why the very first step in a quantum leap, and I've learned more and more about this, and I'm sure we'll dive into some of those
Yeah.
pieces, but the very first step in the quantum leap is actually having a vision. So clarifying what your vision is that you truly authentically want to experience, like continuously, you said, sitting with yourself in stillness and
Mhm.
asking yourself, what is it that me personally, my soul, not me as a mom, not me as a wife, not me as a
Right.
boss or an employee, but what is it that is that seed of desire that has been planted in my heart, what is that? Can I nurture it? Can I give birth to it? Can I surrender to it? So having that vision is really crucial from a nervous system perspective too, because you think about it, if your nervous system is only going to, attract the things and say yes to the things that you've already experienced,
Right.
well, you run these patterns and cycles that sometimes are not healthy, and sometimes they are healthy, but they are keeping you stuck at a certain
Right.
level. So in order to experience something different, you're going to have to give that mental image or that vision to your nervous system over and over.
Mm-hmm.
So this is overused and has been commercialized, but it's a great example where people say, if you are exercising, like say you're in spin and you're cycling,
Mm-hmm.
practicing for the Olympics, you're biking, the
Right.
same part of your brain will light up as if you're actually training, and if you are thinking about training, like visualizing and seeing yourself on the bike and training.
Right.
It's the same exact parts of your brain that will light up. As a matter of fact, they've done studies around this where they say your muscles are actually engaging.
Right.
Even though you're just sitting there, maybe in meditation or visualization, and you are
Right.
experiencing that scene of exercise or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
And so, if you are looking to experience that next level life, relationship, health, whatever it might be, the very first step in this process is actually having a vision and giving that vision over and over and over again to your nervous system. So now your nervous system has experienced this new way of
Right.
being. It's no longer unfamiliar, it's no longer life and death.
Mm.
So it feels safe experiencing it. And then, of course, then you become more aware of the things that would get you to that level. If you would, your reticular activating system will start to pick up the things and filter the things that are, say toxic or in the old patterns, and it
Right.
will give you the new because you've had this memory of it in your nervous
Mm.
system, and it's feeling safe. Less likely to go through a self-sabotage process
Yeah.
where something beautiful happens in your life and you're like, no, that's unfamiliar.
Right.
I'm told to just go by these
Right.
rules. Or
Right.
go with based on what I have experienced in the past. So the very foundational piece of the information here is really having a vision for where you're headed, what you want to experience. And that's what I did. I just committed and
I love that.
surrendered to the vision. If it's in my heart, if I'm seeing it, if I'm feeling it, it's got to be mine.
Right. I love that so much. I love all of that. And there it is, guys. And we'll just recap it right now. And I just want to say one thing that I read. I was looking at and reading through A Course in Miracles. And of course, I go through those, and there's little kernels of things that pop out, and I'm like, okay, another just key to life right there. And it says within there that we do not fear the unknown, we fear the known. We
Mm.
fear what we have already lived, right? It's continuously living in that past cycle, accepting those past things back in, right? Putting power into the past and saying, this is where I live, this is what I know, this is what's familiar. And that's why we repeat it, guys.
Mhm.
That's why we call it back into existence. That's why it keeps happening. Because, yes, we get complacent. It's the old habits. It's just accepting it as enough or what it is or what we know, and that feels safe. Safe does not equate to what we need, right? And what we want to come in. It's just the known. And it's the known that we fear. The unknown hasn't happened yet. The unknown is just complete abundance and unlimited potential, right?
Mhm.
So it's so much that could come in, and it's just as you mentioned. If we have that vision in our heart and we put that vision and we sit with it and we sit in stillness and I'll tell everybody, your intuition, yourself that you tap into in stillness, you know that voice. You know it, right? It's never wrong. It's you. It's innately you, and you know it to be true, and you've known it to be true ever since you were little, right? It's that voice that would never go away. It doesn't scream, it doesn't give you anxiety, it doesn't make your heart race, it doesn't give you butterflies in your stomach, doesn't make you feel sick. It doesn't do any of those things. It's peace, right? And that's where you hold it and you cradle it and you start to call on it more and more. And that could be sitting in stillness, that could be crying in the closet, that could be going and taking a time out in the bathroom because nobody will bother you there. They'll all just wait outside the door. That's going after a meeting, at the office and going and sitting, taking a walk around the building. You let it be whatever that is for you. And like you said, it reminds me of a mantra, right? So you hold this vision, and like you said, and what it sounds like is you just continue to place it up there in what is the giant screen of your thoughts, right? So you reintroduce it because remember, every thought, we know this because we've talked about it with stepping into the gap. Every thought has a beginning and an end. So there's a space in between each one. So keep popping that vision up on the big billboard of your mind and saying, well, yeah, here's all the things that could go wrong and here's all the things that I'm used to. But I live in this space now and this is my mantra,
Mhm.
right? This is what I'm going to hold. And as you said, the seed you planted in your heart is going to continue to grow. But sounds to me that you stayed dedicated and true to that. And that is one of the keys to that success, I would imagine.
Yeah, staying dedicated to the vision, keep saying yes to the vision, even
Yeah.
though from the space you're at, whether it's the bathroom or the closet
Right.
or, at your desk, from that space, it's actually completely unreachable. And
Hmm.
if I logically engaged the left part of my brain and I was like, oh, you're going to live this life and you're going to travel and you're going to contribute this way and you're going to be a single mom and then you're going to meet and be completely unreachable from
Right.
the place, from the frequency, from the energetics of sitting there in the closet. But I could still engage with the vision. I could still
Yeah.
participate with it. I could still merge with the vision and continue to say yes to the vision. Now, I think the vision, some people will have a hard time actually claiming it, saying
Mm.
yes to that vision,
Hmm.
right? It's really hard to see a possibility from a dark space in a closet, metaphorically,
Right.
in my case, literally.
Yeah.
So over the last decade, I sort of figured out these four elements or four steps that it takes to actually quantum leap, right? First, I want to define quantum leap. You and I kind of chatted
Yeah.
before this. The book U Squared by Price
Hmm.
Pritchett. It's a
Yes.
great book, and it talks about a quantum leap. And if you look up the definition of a quantum leap, this is when a proton will go from one layer into another, like it makes the jump, right, from a quantum physics perspective. That definition is that jump in the layer. But if you look at what it takes for that proton to actually make the quantum leap, it's not
Mm.
more work. It's not more work. It's not having to put in more effort. All it is a completely different energetic state.
Yeah.
So once I understood that, because my first thought as I was in the closet was, okay, I need to do things differently. But my brain, based on what I had done before, was like, okay,
Mhm.
doing things differently would mean set a new goal in my business, have
Right.
this next level to achieve and then get to it. And I had this moment where it was like, that's not going to work. That's just more hard work and more hustle.
Right.
And I think, during those periods of time, like when you're young in your early 20s, mid 20s, even early 30s, you're just kind of,
Yeah.
you might be engaging in building the career and building
Hmm.
professional, finding yourself. So I realized it wasn't in doing more, it was
Right.
actually in the becoming and in shifting the
Mm.
energetics of who I was. So I realized the vision was not in alignment with who I was in that moment. The version of
Right.
me who was living that life, internationally traveling, all the things, was not who I was. And
Yeah.
so what I did is I go, okay, well, who is that version of me that has the ability to live that life, has the energetics, has the
Hmm.
belief systems, the habits, the thought process, like how is she operating, what is she like? So the second step in this process would be to defining the identity of the version of you that is
Mm.
living that dream life, right? And I call it the unreasonable life because everything then in the past decade that I set out to do became so unreasonable. Even my family sometimes like, you're crazy. Like, how are you doing this? Or
Right.
does this make any sense?
Right.
Reasonable. It's juicy for me, but it's unreasonable to the consciousness of the world. And so you have to find what is your unreasonable dream life, your version of it,
Right.
and then go, who is the version of me? Who's this next level, future version of me who is living that life? And really identify her. Because I do believe that if the seed is in your heart, if that is
Hmm.
planted in your heart, then you are designed to evolve into that next version of you. You're going to be able
Absolutely.
to help so many people in the evolution of tapping into the identity of the next version of yourself.
I love that. And what you just said there, yes, it could seem intimidating, right? When you're moving in and kind of growing to fill the space of this beautiful next evolution of you and version of yourself that wakes up to this dream. And, and write it down. What is it like? I always like to write down. I'll go through a day. I woke up in the morning, in this house that I envision getting ready to go to work and do the things that I envision to the point where the dog comes in and I go walk him on the beach or something like that. Go so far, whether it's in a meditation in a journal. And please don't be intimidated by it. The journey is the process. That's the beautiful part of it. It's not, and I'm sure you can share with everybody, it's not even so much being there, right? Because we're continuously evolving and we're going to until we take our last breath on this beautiful world. But it's the journey of it that can be so incredibly precious in those moments. When you see somebody a month from now, 2 weeks from now, when you've started this process, and this is for everybody listening, somebody's going to stop you. It could be a stranger, it could be a friend, it could be, your sister, your brother, your spouse, and they're going to bring something to you and you're going to actively listen and you're going to share with them and they're going to be like, wow, thank you. That you've held space for them, that you've gifted some of this that you're doing for yourself, because that's what automatically starts happening.
Mhm.
You kind of automatically gift it on to others as you go through the process. And that's the most beautiful part about it, right? It's this journey that you're going to start to embark on with really discovering and developing and growing into this self,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. I love that you said it can be scary. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, I tell my students if it's not unreasonable and if it doesn't feel a little bit crazy for
Yeah,
where you're
right.
sitting, it's probably not. You may want to push a little bit. You may want
Right.
to push a little bit. You may want to expand that vision a bit
Hmm.
because I think the biggest fear, like you were talking, is actually living in this expanded dream life that we think is so far away for us. And
Right.
again, I call it that, but it's literally anything that you desire. It could be
Mm.
a job you want. It could be happiness. It could be peace. It could be the house of your dreams. It could be building an orphanage. Whatever it is that
Right.
your heart desires, authentically yours, just as long as we're not following some kind of borrowed dreams.
Right. And it can be, I love that point too. It doesn't have to be so enormous that you feel, again, that you're taking a page from somebody else's book. This is your story, you're writing it. And if it's something that's so similar to what others have done, nobody's done it like you. We want to hear you. We
Mhm.
want to hear your voice. Nobody will tell it as you have. Nobody has the thoughts and can share as you do. So please continue to share. We've never seen it as you've shared before. And it could be something, it doesn't have to be a total, reformulation of your whole life. It could just be how you show up as a spouse or a partner or a sister or a brother or parent, or just how you show up in the world and what you give at work. It could just be tapping in you want to know yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to tap into what it values and figure out that identity again that maybe you feel like got covered up by all the layers that society or whomever imposed on you or that you picked up along the way of life, right? I kind of feel like we're on this journey and I see us and we pick up a piece here, we pick up a piece there, and it feels very vulnerable to shed all of that
Mm-hmm.
and be so light that you're like, I'm going to take off like a balloon and I don't know where I'm going to go and I'm untethered. But embrace it, lean into it a little bit, because then you're going to start to expand and you get a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more comfortable. And before you know it, you're doing the things and things are coming on your path, and that voice is getting a little bit louder inside, and the vision becomes a little bit clearer. And just when you think you want to pack it all in and go hide under your covers, lean in a little bit more because that's where breakthrough's about to happen, I think. And that's where you break, they say, you break down to break through. And Rumi has a beautiful quote, all of the cracks, all of the cuts, all of the scars, that's where the light shines in. So we got to break this hard layer apart to be able to get to what's really on the inside.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said, and I loved the analogy of this unfettered balloon, the freedom, the sense of freedom that, it can be a bit scary because where's this balloon going? What's going to happen? The
Right.
unknown, right? And to speak to what you were saying too, I think in this journey of sitting with yourself and defining what it is that you want to experience in this particular journey, the more you go internal and the more you follow that intuition, like you so beautifully put, then in that process of evolution, you're really becoming a lot more of who you are and a lot less of what the consciousness of the world has put on you. And I love this little fact. I use it all the time and I tell my students all the time. There's when we are born, we only have two fears that we are born with. One is a fear of falling, and the other one is fear of loud noises. And they're not really fears either, because you're not afraid of, I'm going to fall any second. It's just
Right.
that you've been in a space in the womb and, it's cushiony in there and it's quiet in there. So when you come out, it's not, you don't have the expectation of a loud noise, and you're not constantly waiting for the loud noise. I'm afraid of this or any of that. It's just that you have the reflex that you respond to. But those are typically, they say, those are the two only fears that you are born with. Not fear of not having enough, not being
Right.
enough, not being being a failure or doubt or any
Hmm.
of those things. So everything else that we have picked up along the
Right.
way, fears and doubts and not enoughness and scarcity, they are all things to be shed. They're all things to be felt, and they're all things to be shed in the process. And I think having a vision that is authentically yours,
Yeah.
surrendering to that gives you a pathway or and a sort of journey in which you get to learn along the way how to let go of
Mm.
those pieces of you that don't really belong to you anyway.
Right. Yeah, they're like little hitchhikers that have jumped on you. I think of like barnacles on a whale or those little, things that get on large animals, and you're like, okay, that's got to be uncomfortable. And it is. And I would say to everybody, that uncomfortable feeling that you feel pretty regularly, call it anxiety, call it identity crisis, call it whatever, just being uncomfortable in your skin. That's because you've adopted a lot of these fears, right? You've allowed them to be your own. You've accepted them as your own, and you're doing these things that are not in line with your truest self. So no wonder you're feeling uncomfortable,
Mhm.
right? Because it's not in tune with who you are and who you innately know that you want to be. And then I would say, people will say, well, how can I stop the voice that tells me I can't? How can I stop the fears? And I know one trick, and I'd like you to, definitely share your tools and tips for your students. But for me, I was listening to a wonderful podcast and we were talking about monkey mind and the ego and intuition, and treat that beautiful ego, right, which is coming from a place of survival. It's there to try and protect you. But we're no longer running from the saber-toothed tiger, and we're not hiding in a cave, and we're not, scavenging for food. We're okay. And I like to treat it as if it was a dear friend or my own inner child. And I say, I see you. I hear you. I've got this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's heard, it's validated, and you can do this, right? So it's whatever mantra that it is. You could say, I'm safe. You could say, I've got this. I can think about something. Ram Dass likes to say, be here now. Right now is all we have, so whatever it is that feels very good to you, say that. And I know that's simply what I say. So that little beautiful monkey mind that's going, that ego who's flashing that big warning side, turn around, go back to the known. It didn't work for you then, but it might work now, and we know it. And we'll probably, get the same results. But hey, I just kind of slowly go past it and say, thank you, see you, we've got it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think there are, from a neurological perspective, there are two ways to break any kind of pattern, right? I like to think that the monkey mind, and there's tons of research around this, is not the monkey mind itself. There are reasons why we have the monkey mind, like you said.
Right.
It's life and death. It's trying to make sure that we survive and we can pass on
Yeah.
that to our offsprings. But the the monkey mind for each person is different, right? My monkey mind might be saying certain things. Your monkey mind will say certain other things, but typically they're saying the same kind of thing over and over and over again to me. And those are
Mm-hmm.
really what they are. They are emotional addictions, right?
Mm.
So those
Mm-hmm.
emotions, I am addicted to, I think most people will relate to this. I have this addiction to the stressed out, the overwhelmed, it's easy. If you told me when was the last time you were stressed out, I could tell you probably this morning trying to get my
Yeah.
kids out the door, breakfast
Right.
fed, and put their clothes on, and so that I can
Go.
be here on time. But if you told me when was the last time that I felt abundant, when was the last time I
Mm.
felt joy or freedom or in love,
Right.
or, then I have to really either I have a practice, like you're saying,
Mm.
like a mantra or a practice that I do. It's a habit, it's a ritual. Then I could say, yes, I did my gratitude practice this morning.
Right.
And so that's why it's called a gratitude practice. We don't need
Mm.
practice experiencing the emotional addictions of stressed out and not enoughness and doubt and you can't do it. Those are all just emotional addictions. And there are two ways from the brain and nervous system perspective that you can break those kinds of patterns. And one of them actually integrates what you just described. So the two ways, one is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants that, but
Right.
you've got a big trauma happening in your life, loss of a loved one, a big divorce, something that's really tragic. Most people will find a completely different perspective, and it changes the neurochemistry of the brain. So you probably
Mm-hmm.
have different habits. You do life differently, right? So
Right.
neurologically, the brain completely shifts if the trauma is big enough, and you'll shift your path.
Mm-hmm.
The second way that's more practical for us is to give the brain a new pattern. So it's not to
Yeah.
say, no, I'm no longer going to be X, Y, and Z in this addiction of not enoughness or fear. It's more so replacing the pattern with something different. So what you described was, okay, well, maybe a mantra. I'm recognizing that it
Mm-hmm.
exists, right? I'm not going to resist it because if I'm resisting, I'm giving it more energy and more space in my life
Right.
anyways. Recognize that you are here, but I'm going to replace it with a new pattern. And I think the best way to replace with a new pattern is picking, like you mentioned, a mantra that
Mm-hmm.
resonates with you, or a new emotional addiction. So maybe the mantra brings on the feeling because we do have to engage the limbic system, the emotional aspect
Right.
of the brain, right? So maybe the mantra brings me immediate peace. And if it does
Mm.
that, then it's even more powerful because I
I
just
love that.
stressed out. And now I recognize the stressed out as an emotional addiction or as the monkey. I
Yeah.
recognize, I said, okay, and then I'm going to replace it with a mantra that gives me emotional addiction, a new pattern, which might be peace, which might be
Right.
gratitude. So having some level of an emotional or visceral experience that helps
Mhm.
us embody the next emotion, a more higher vibration of an emotion, then it trains our brain to move more into peace, joy, love, abundance, or the things that we are choosing to experience.
I love that. How beautiful. And I love the connection that you've got to take it a step further to embody that new emotion, right? And even probably tap into your breath, which you can do pretty quickly, and go through breathing practices. And I'm sure this resonates with everybody on the line. I mean, it does. Being born was traumatic. I find that fact so fun to share that we've all been through some trauma, even though maybe life has felt, pretty good and there haven't been a lot that you want to talk. Being born is traumatic. It's our
Mhm.
first traumatic experience. We've all gone through it. And then we have life and the journey of life. And I like to think that, you haven't really lived till you've been through a lot of the things that a lot of us have gone through.
Mhm.
And it's hard in itself. So I know we all have something that we're looking to work through, or become more aware of, or something potentially that keeps showing up in our lives and producing the same results. And that's why this practice and everything that we've talked about on the call now is such a great process to go through. And I'd say, even if it's not something, life doesn't feel incredibly uncomfortable to you and everything's going well, what a great practice just to tap into yourself,
Mhm.
right? And see, is there anything else there that I'd like to pull out and recognize and be even more comfortable within who I am and this, body and this outward appearance and this, gift that I'm putting out into life, right?
Mhm.
And then I'd say, again, one thing that I was thinking about just in all of this can still feel very heavy and scary for so many. And for the person who, just got out of the closet metaphorically from crying or the bathroom and just doesn't know the next right step and feels that it would almost be selfish. And I'm going to throw that term out there because I know I felt that way for a long time. It was selfish to make waves. It was selfish to say that I needed to take a break and I needed to take a step back and I needed to look at this or I needed more time for stillness. And I know, as a single mother and working in this and that, still sometimes it pops into my head. It's like, oh, you can't keep pushing. Then I'm like, but I can. And I'm going to because I'm better for it.
Mhm.
And I'm better for it for the people around me. And I would say to anybody who's battling with that right now, that word selfish, throw it out the window.
Mhm.
Just throw it out because there's nothing selfish about it. And why it's not selfish is because if you start this process, even the smallest, littlest step of going just being in stillness and connecting with yourself for just a few minutes, you are then embodying it, as we mentioned before, for the people around you who you love and the people that you don't even know. You are giving them the green light. You are showing them the yes. You are showing them that they can do the same thing. And the reason I feel, and I'd love to get your take, why we get so much resistance from the people in our lives, right? Our families, this and that, because it's uncomfortable to them,
Mhm.
right? It's the people that you run into, the kindred spirits, the people who are already on the journey, right? Because we can only meet people where they are. That you meet, and they're like the high five in the air, right? The energetic high five, because they're like, I see you, I see what you're doing. You meet no resistance. The resistance are from those who are also uncomfortable and a little scared. So
Mhm.
keep pushing along because you're showing them that they don't have to be, and they themselves can do it too.
Yeah, I love that. I not too long ago, because most of my career I was this person that was trying to help other people.
Yeah.
In everything that I've done, even still today, but the way that I approach it is so different. And I read this quote, which was, "Let your life be your message." So
Mm.
that kind of shifted me from wanting to help people see their potential. I mean, I still have a very big desire for anyone that I meet. I'm always like, if I have one superpower, it's that I see your potential beyond
Mm.
all the limitations that you believe. but I no longer push and I no longer pull and sort of create this sense of responsibility to get you there. And even I've had to
Hmm.
kind of scale back even with my children as they grow up a bit, and move more into how can I live a life that is inspired within my own journey, and how can I share more and that allow that to be my message, allow that to be the inspiration, because that way I'm attracting the people that are, that are about to give me the high five, the energetic high five, or
Right.
they're looking for that. They're in
Yeah.
resonance with what is there. And to speak to, filling up your cup and letting go of the feelings of being selfish. One of my favorite people, Michael Beckwith, he uses this example that I reference all the time. He says, "You do not give from a full cup." Right? At first you hear that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, "You do not give from a full cup because the full cup is actually yours. You give from the overflow." So that's how much attention you
I
have
love
to
that.
you do too. That's how much attention you have to give to yourself, to sit with yourself, to listen to into
Mm.
your own journey so that you can give from the overflow to your children, to people you come across, to your relatives, and allow your life to be the message that way.
I love that. And what if we were all walking around with these overflowing cups? If we were to get the world to that state, I mean, how incredible would that be? So I'd ask everybody on the phone to think about that for a second. Because we're not right now. We are all, if we had like the little battery symbol with the lights lighting up, we're all, down halfway empty. Or in the middle, you see people walking around. It's funny, I'll call friends or family, they're like really busy, tired, can't do that. They're like, "What did you do?" And I was like, "Well, I just, last night I went and looked to get my belay certification because my kids want to start climbing." And they're like, "What? Where did you make time for that?" And I'm like, "I can find time. If you'd like me to look at your schedule, we can always find time." But
Mhm.
it's because your cup's full, right? You've cultivated those practices. And it's not a perfect scenario, right? Life is not, it's a practice.
Mhm.
Just like all things, just like living is, it's a practice of living,
Mhm.
right? That's not just for doctors and lawyers. They have their practices, but we do as humans too, right? It's our practice of life. And we're going to keep cultivating these practices and calling them into our lives, which are going to make it that much more beautiful and more connected and better, and filling that cup till we get to the point where the majority of the time we are overflowing. And
Mhm.
we can say, here you go to the kids, and here you go to the spouse, and here you go to your family. And then when that's enough, right? I've got to really set my boundaries, which are so beautiful to have.
Mhm.
And then you cultivate that life for yourself. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I feel like we could talk for another hour. I promise to all of you listening on the line that we will hopefully have a part two and get that set up so we can continue this conversation. But before we go, all of the information will be put in the notes, so don't feel like you have to write it down right here. All of the areas where you can find Dr. Nona and connect with her and talk about all these beautiful things will be listed when we release this episode. But if you could really quickly share where people can find you.
I think an easy space, especially relevant to this conversation, if you feel like it resonated with you, it helped you, it add value in some ways, probably just on Instagram. Send me a message, connect with me, let me know you are from this podcast and you know Tessa, you listen to her. And I have tons of resources if you're looking for, where do I even begin with this vision? How do I address the things that come up? I have a free guide and a blueprint that might be able to help. I just need a reminder of, hey, you said this on, I was on this podcast, and I'll be happy to send it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And everybody listening, thank you. Go out, get the blueprint. It's a great place to start and start designing this and have fun with it.
Hmm.
Let's re embrace what it was to be fun and to be kids at heart. And let's just redesign and become the architects of our lives again, because we can. We can all do it. So thank you so much for listening. Bye.